Hello, 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 everybody. I am Rosalind Brown of Your Wealth Guidance, where we help Black women create their financial independence map and identify the tools for success so you can live life on your own terms. I want to thank you for joining us today. As we go into our first speaker, we are really focused this year on actionable items, things that you can do today, make a change. You were probably listening to all the Money Mondays in the last couple of years and so forth, and you're like, I'm a do. No more I'm gonna do. It's we are making actionable steps to improve our situation in 2023. So we have Nia, who is the creator and founder of Perspectives, a personal finance education brand. Perspectives' mission is to take women from struggling and stressed to empowered about money so they can achieve financial stability. How many of y'all stressed? Like, we only 2 weeks into the year. Um, she learned about money matters on her own and didn't always make it a priority, which caused her to max out credit cards, mismanage money, file for bankruptcy, you name it. After self correction, she was able to purchase her first home at the age of 27, pay her way through undergrad, and eliminate $50,000 in consumer debt. She used her own story, education, and experiences to help individuals of all ages rewrite their money story. She's the founder of the Money Mastery Academy, the author of the 30-Day Money Challenge, and Life is Short, Buy the House. Nia is a lifelong Chicago resident and a certified financial education instructor, as well as holds an MBA in finance from Keller Graduate School of Management. Nia attended Chicago State University, where she obtained her Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. Thank you for being with us today, Nia. And I think that's a story. Like, sometimes people are listening to people and they like, listen, I did this one thing, I got rich. Y'all should be like me. And that ain't usually the story. That's not the reality that many of us are sitting and experiencing. And so, what was like the main thing that said, oh, girl, like, was it a number? Was it an experience?
And you know what? I'm going to be completely honest. It wasn't one thing. So, my financial journey or my money story was a process. It had levels, it had ups, it had downs, I learned, but I didn't learn the whole thing. So, okay, let's go back. We're gonna run this back again. We're gonna try this again. So it's like, to me, honestly, it's like most things. It's like marketing. It's an experiment. You have to try and see what works for you and see what helps you obtain your money goals. And then if you find out that this is not working or you have a setback, it's okay. Dust your shoulders off and get back, on the horse, essentially. So I don't have it's not like one thing. Of course, being a single mother. So I was the product of a single mother. My mama had me at 17 and I was her third child. And then I myself became a single mother at 17. So of course I had that drive of not wanting my daughter to continue that cycle and wanting to provide a better life for her. But that alone didn't help me be a better steward of my finances. Like, I had to still go through the trials and the tribulations of the journey.
I think that's a really good point. We talk about how we repeat some of the things that either we've experienced or our family. If your parents were bad with money, you're like, well, that's how we did it. We wrote the check, we went on the trip, we bought the stuff. And so when you think about how things were growing up, because especially if you're the third child of a 17-year-old, mm-hmm. Think about how much did I know and how responsible was I at 17? So I'm quite sure those money spend type patterns very different than today. How one has that influenced you, or did that influence you? And how is that different even from as you look at your siblings and your mom now?
So it absolutely influenced me, and it influenced me in more ways than one. For one, she didn't really have time to teach me about financial education. Again, I was the third child. And so she was working to make sure we had food on the table and a roof over our head. She was in survival mode, essentially. So coming home to be able to sit down and teach financial education would have been a luxury to her. Most of the day she was at work. So it affected me, one, because I grew up in a food scarcity environment. So when I started to be on my own and have a place. I had limiting beliefs of my own where I was scared. I had that scare, they call it the scarcity mindset. I was scared about not having. I was scared about never, my child going to the refrigerator and experiencing what I did and not having food. So it manifested into me purchasing too much food. I felt good if my freezer was full. If my freezer was full, I felt like, okay, it doesn't matter that it's going to spoil because there's only 2 of us in the household and we're not going to be able to eat all this food in the time that the date said, the best by, used by date says. But it made me feel good that I felt like I had did it. I made sure that she didn't. So I had to go through and realize, one, that I was doing that. And then I had to realize the effect it was having on my financial goals, because I'm spending all of this money that's going down a drain that could be going towards helping me achieve a financial goal. And then the second thing it did is I started to value things because I was the youngest in a small household living in poverty. I didn't get much, or anything I did get was a hand-me-down. So I had to process being able to say, like, mine. Mine, like, this is mine because I can have things now, So those are the type of things that it affected me financially, and it caused me to spend money I didn't have for the sake of having. It made me spend money I didn't have, buy things that I already had at home because I felt like my refrigerator is supposed to be full at all times. Like, that was a sign of I'm doing good. So it's different ways. And looking at my mom and my sisters and them now, she's doing better now, but it took her a while to get a job that had like benefits and things like that, where she can start to set herself up financially. So it also impacted me in the sense that I made the decision, I don't want to be in that predicament when I get to that age. So what can I do? How can I educate myself and learn so that I can do better? And of course, help my mom at the same time.
I think that's a really good point, because some people are saying, I got all these things to worry about. So maybe they're thinking about kids, they're thinking about just putting food on the table. How do they know when it's time? So you might have this dream and you're like, one of these days I'm going to buy a house. How do you know when you're ready, when it's actually time to make that move?
So I wrote a whole book about this. How do you know when you're ready? The first thing you have to do is to know where you're at. Are you comfortably paying your current bills? Do you have your money situation in order now? Because purchasing a house is not going to make you miraculously become a good steward over your finances. So you want to fix your financial foundation. And you want that set before you take on this expense, because buying a house is more than just purchasing a mortgage. And then the home buying process is more than just saving for a down payment.
Now, how do you know when it's okay? You're like, all right, I ain't ready. So I know I ain't ready. You might be like, okay, I'm in this apartment. Things are working. I'm just making ends meet here. What are some of those, like, okay, in the next 6 months, I can make this type of progress?
So you made a good point when you said, I'm barely making things here. If you're barely making things there in the apartment, then you might want to evaluate yourself. So we always hear, oh, well, you don't live above your means, don't live above your means. You have to identify what your means are, so you can know if you're living above it or below it. So you want to take a look in the mirror. You got to have a little come to Jesus moment with yourself and really think about what your financial goals look like. Do you plan on moving in the next 5 to 10 years? You really want to think about how this house is going to fit into your financial goals. I strongly don't recommend you purchase a house because somebody else feels like you should, or purchase a house for someone else. You should purchase a house because you want to, and it aligns with your financial goals. Every step you make should be like, okay, this goes into my goals this way. So this is why this is a good decision and a good move for me. So 6 months down the line, you're looking at what you're going to do. I recommend 5 steps. First, you're going to, of course, like I just said, look at your budget, identify how much money is coming in, what's coming out. Do you need to make any cuts? Essentially, you want to be comfortable in your house. You don't want to be at the limit where once you finish paying your bills, you're broke because you have children in extracurricular activities, Maybe you and your sorors have your annual trip that you want to go on. You don't want to have to stop doing those things because you're purchasing a house. So you're going to identify how much mortgage you can afford, how much home can you afford, include landscaping. If you live in the area, snow removal, air ducts need to be cleaned, gutters need to be cleaned. Like all of that maintenance and repairs is essential when you own a house. So you want to create a budget to identify how much mortgage you need to have, because that's a conversation you're going to sit down and actually talk to your lender, as this is your process and you are empowered to own it, to let the lender know how much you can afford to pay, because you're shopping for lenders. You don't have to take whatever lender that you want. Secondly, you're going to build an emergency fund, and this fund is going to have enough money to have savings. You need to be building enough money for down payment. There are fees associated with the home buying process, like inspections, appraisals. You also might need additional inspections. It's no guarantee that one inspection will be enough, because a lot of it depends on the market that you're buying your house. That market might be prone to termites, which means you need an additional inspection to search to see if you have termites on your property. That's another expense you're going to have to pay. The bank is going to hire an appraiser to come out and appraise the house. But guess what? You got to fit the bill for the appraiser. So that's another fee you're going to have to pay. And then all those wonderful members of your home buying dream team, they're not there for fun. So you're going to have all of their fees associated on your closing documents. So that's more than enough reasons why you want to make sure that you have enough money saved to make sure that you are safe and will not walk away from the closing table and not have any money. Next, you're going to work to eliminate debt, but you eliminate debt when you want to purchase a house different than you eliminate debt just to boost your credit score. You're looking at the highest claim on your paycheck. When you purchase a home, a lender is going to look at your debt to income ratio, which means exactly how it sounds. Is how much debt you have per month going out compared to how much income you have coming in. The lender is saying like, well, you owe all of these people. I want to see your ability to pay all of them and pay me too. If it looks like you can't pay all of them and pay me too, then I'm not going to be able to give you this loan. So that's why you want to look to see if it's possible for you to eliminate some of those higher claims. That's going to do a couple of things. It's going to, one, make you more comfortable in your bills, because now you have less things to pay when you get paid. For two, it's going to make you qualify for more house, because they use that to determine how much house you qualify for. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to find your home buying dream team. This is your realtor, home inspector, attorney. Depending on what market you are in, you might be required to have an attorney. You might not be required, which will bring me to the fifth one. But you want to make sure that you are looking to find these people not once you're at the point of buying the house. You start looking at them beforehand, because remember, this is your home buying process. So you are shopping for them. You're not just going with this person because your cousin bought their house with them 5 years ago. So, I'm just going to work with them. No, because they might not be the best person for you. And then, of course, lastly, you want to do your research. So what type of loan options out there? Because we hear about FHA, we hear about conventional loans, but one thing you should know is FHA is not a bank. FHA is a federal program. The banks are the ones who are actually going to be giving out the money. So they give their own rules when they give out their own money, which means they have overlays. And an overlay basically means it's an extra requirement they have additional to what FHA requires. So you want to talk to lenders to find out what type of loan products do they have, because depending on your financial situation, this lender might tell you, oh, well, we can't do anything unless you do this, which they'll be telling you the truth, but their truth only applies to that lender. You might talk to another lender that has a loan product that works directly with what you have and actually might be better for you, but you have to learn what those different options are. You have to you want to take control and be empowered in your process.
Now, you made a really good point, because a lot of times people go to the bank and the bank says you can afford X. And they're like, oh, I didn't think I could afford that much.
That's none of your business.
So, like all of those other expenses, I remember when I got my first house and I was like, wait, what?
It's a lot. It's a lot.
And it's always, something go wrong. You're like, ain't nothing ever covered by the warranties or nothing. So how do you figure out what that extra amount? So, they're telling you principal and interest. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay for pest control and all these other random people. You're like, service the AC every year? Like,
every year. Mhm.
Like, how does one
That's not
find the
even
list or know?
including random repairs when your sink just starts working or your garbage disposal, or you need someone to come rot out your sewer line in the basement. So it's other random things. So when you're thinking about saving for down payment and closing costs, it's going to be based on the purchase price. Whatever percentage they're giving you, it's going to be based on the purchase price. Your closing costs, I would say 2 to 5% of your purchase price is what you want to estimate. Then going past that, you want to have a regular emergency fund. And essentially, before people would say, 3 to 4 months. After the pandemic, I think you need a little bit more to be safe, because as we see things get real out here, and she made a good point. When you go to first apply for a house, the lender will give you a letter called the pre-approval letter. This letter will basically let you know how much home you qualify for. That's none of your business. And the reason why it's none of your business, because one, you don't want to buy all the way at the top, because you don't know how this process is going to go, and you might need a little bit more funds depending on what happens during your transaction. Secondly, the lender is judging by what they saw on your credit report. They don't know that you go on this annual trip. They don't know that you like to get your nails and your feet done and you like to keep your hair done. They don't know that your son has band practice and has a recital, and your daughter has to go to Florida every year because she has cheer championship that she wins every year. None of that they don't know. So the amount they're giving you is not based on you paying all those additional charges. And you're the one who's going to be married to this mortgage, because you're saying in 30 years or however many years you pick, you're going to, in sickness and in health, through good or bad, you're going to pay them their money on time. So you have to make decisions based on you and what's best for you. So I think that's a really good point. That number means nothing.
And I think that's some of the reason why some people are scared. You talked about 360 people like, listen, I ain't even ready to get married to my, husband, my boyfriend of 5-10 years. So I ain't ready to make this 30-year commitment. And so for people who are saying, okay, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to make a 30-year commitment. Maybe I might want to move in 3 or 4 years. Does it make sense for them to look into home ownership?
And that's the thing. That's what I have to think about. I actually have a chapter in my book called Mind-Blowing Decisions. And that's what it covers. Renting versus owning, single family versus multi-unit. What happens if I want to buy a condo? It's so many different decisions to this process. And as we just said, you'll be married to this mortgage for 30 years. It's not something to take lightly, and it's not something to jump into. If you're going to move within 5 years, you're moving in 3 years, it's possible that buying a home at that time might not be a good idea for you, because the amount of money you have to come up with between down payment, whatever repairs or things you might make, depending on what the market does in that 3 years, it's possible that you might lose money. So these are the reasons why you have to do your research and learn about these things. Like, I have a home buying terms you should know. What's a seller's market? What's a buyer's market? And which market are we currently in? These are the type of questions you're going to ask yourself to decide if purchasing a home will be the best move for you. And when it comes to selling, if it's the right time to sell. So another big thing that's going on right now is the interest rate is extremely high compared to in the past. Maybe a couple of years ago, the interest rate was as low as 2%. You cannot find a 2% rate right now. So they say marry the mortgage, date the rate, which basically means that since the housing prices are dropping, you would buy while the housing prices are dropping. And then when the rate goes down, then you would refinance. But the part of that you have to think about is, if you're going to refinance, that's almost like going through the closing process again, which means you're going to need money. You're not going to be able to refinance without having some money saved to go through that closing process again. So if, I've seen a lot of people say it, marry the mortgage, date the rate, but you got to remember that part. If you're only dating a rate, that means you have to have money to keep refinancing while you're only dating this rate, which essentially means having your finances in order, because you got to have money saved. Your credit has to be good enough to get that lower interest rate. All of those things will be a factor. So it makes more sense before you purchase, period, work on your finances and build your financial foundation, because you're going to need to leverage that credit later and use it till its full impact.
And I think you made a really good point, because people are like, okay, rates are high. Okay, but I just remember the cost of housing was so high and people were fighting, they're like rumbling in the streets trying to get a house. So people are now trying to figure out, is this the time to buy? Did they miss the time to buy? Should they wait another year, 6 months? How do you determine when is the time to buy?
And see, that's all. See, I don't believe in giving like cookie cutter solutions. So I don't think there is a way to say, like, yes, it's the time to buy ultimately for everybody, or no, it depends on that person and their situation. Because being honest and complete, I have a very realistic, keep it real type personal finance educator, and I try to provide realistic solutions. The rates could be super high, but being honest with yourself, if the rates were 1.9%, could you walk into the bank and purchase a house right now? If not, even if the rate was low and it was perfect right now, then that means you need to work on your financial foundation. And it doesn't matter what the rate is or what the prices are, you got to work on you first. You got to, spend some time with yourself and your wallet, and you all talk it out a little bit. So essentially, when you're deciding what time it is, it's what time that's best for you. I'm looking to purchase, but I'm purchasing another investment property. So it's a little bit of a difference, So when you are looking, should you purchase, should you not purchase, the chances of the rates getting down to 2 is very slim, but who knows what the prices are like. It's hard. I am not by far someone who can I can predict the market to say exactly what it's going to do. So I try not to do that.
I think that's a good point. And then what about for people who are saying, okay, some people say get a condo, some people say don't get a condo, a townhome. How do you determine which one? Because people hear all the different things about one is going to appreciate and one isn't. But there's definitely costs that are different depending on which type of property that you get as well.
It is. And buying a condo, or even in a lot of areas in the United States, like the Atlantas, the Floridas, the Texas, they have like these gated communities that have homeowners associations, which is just similar to like purchasing with the condo, because with the condo, you have a condo association. Well, that condo association or housing association, HOA, they have fees that you have to pay. So you have to pay your dues monthly. To me, one of the biggest important things you want to do or see about when purchasing a condo, what are the rules? What are the laws that this association has set for this property that I'm about to sign my agreement and say that I'm going to live by? Because if you plan on ever moving, and like a prime example, I always use my cousin as an example. Short story, my aunt passed away in 2016. My aunt is a 6-unit condo building. My aunt was the oldest owner. Everybody else had moved out. Her condo is paid off. When she passed away, in the bylaws, it said they got to have a meeting to decide if my cousin could stay.
Wow.
In the only house she ever knew, because she had been there since she was 2.
Oh, wow.
And she was the only condo that was paid off. But because the bylaws, and they of course didn't vote her out, but it's the fact that the bylaws said that they had the right to. So you have to look to see what are the rules. And that's why I always recommend an attorney. And then some states like Florida, I was recently learned, you have to put a higher down payment in order for the bank to be able to look at the financials, because that's a whole nother animal. You want to make sure your association is financially sound, which means that they have enough money to pay the bills that are coming, and they have money sitting in reserves, which reserves basically mean they have an emergency fund for the homeowners association. Because what you have to think about is you have your homeowners dues, but condos and different places that have associations have community property and grounds that the maintenance and anything is financed by the current owners. Well, if they're not financially sound and they're living paycheck to paycheck, then guess what? If something happens that's a big purchase and they have no money in their emergency fund, they're going to give a special assessment, which means that you're going to have to pay an additional fee to your homeowner association dues every month based on them not being able to manage their money, which is completely unfair. If I just bought this condo a year ago and now you're telling me I have to pay for the porch, I didn't even know there was a porch. I haven't even got that far yet on the tour. So these are the things that you want to look into when you're looking to purchase, and look at the homeowner association dues, because if they're almost $1,000, that's essentially might as well tack that on your mortgage because that's a part of your monthly expenses. So it's a lot to think about.
I think that's a really big one because people sometimes they're just like, oh, that's not a big deal. But so many costs actually change. And I think that's, people always
They
talk about
do.
the difference between rent versus buying. And they
Yeah.
expect that your mortgage on day one, you close today, January 16th, and your mortgage is $1,000. 2 years from now, your mortgage probably won't be $1,000.
Correct. Exactly. Taxes go up, everything. The only thing constant is change. And then another part with the condos you want to think about is if you ever want to move out and rent it out, does the rule say you can do that? If you ever want to start a home daycare, does the rule say that you can do that? Because some homeowner association rules, again, my cousin says that she can only use her condo for living purposes. She cannot start a business out of her condo, which is insane because it's something that you own.
And even bake cakes.
Which is insane. So it's like you have to make sure you're reading those rules and that they're financially sound. I think that's huge when you're purchasing within any association.
Now, and I've heard a number of stories, and people are like, I don't know, I can't do this. What are some of the mistakes that people make during the home buying process?
A lot. So one thing, I have a whole list of 10 that are like the most popular. So one, it won't 100% get you knocked out of the home loan, but I don't recommend it. Large deposits. So essentially, when you start the home buying process, they are watching your finances like a hawk. They're watching what's coming in, what's coming out. When you first started, of course, you'll have to submit your documents, but do not think that that is the last time you will have to submit them. On a rolling 30-day period, you will need to submit new paychecks and new bank statements. I normally recommend my students, just get them ready, be proactive, have them ready. You know they're going to request them. Send them to them so they don't have to ask you so that your process can go quicker. So you want to be mindful because just because you already sent those first ones in does not mean that they're no longer watching. Second, do not finance anything. You can wait to get your furniture. You can wait to get that new car. You can wait. Do not co-sign anything. You don't want any new inquiries. And I know you're thinking, oh, it's just the inquiry. It hasn't hit my credit yet. Baby, the underwriters are going to ask you, what's this? We need a letter of explanation for what this is. And then if they're going to ask you, did any new debt, start as a result of this inquiry? So when you say yes, oh yes, I bought a car. Okay, well, we need the documentation to say what your new car note is going to be. Then they're going to redo all of your paperwork and assess if you can afford this mortgage with that debt. And remember, as I said, your debt to income ratio. So now if you have a higher debt compared to the same income, you might not qualify for that house that you're about to close on. And you might have just essentially knocked yourself out of the running to be able to get this loan because now from their standpoint, you owe too many people. We don't want to get in line. We don't want to get in line. You have enough people in line and, we just decided we don't no longer want to be a part of this. So you have to think about that. Changing jobs. If you're changing jobs and you make more money, I feel like you can work around that better because you've now secured a higher income, which makes you more comfortable. You always want to talk to your lender about this if you're doing this in the middle so they can help you navigate it. But changing jobs, completely different industry, less money, don't recommend it. 0 stars. Because now you don't have the income. So they're looking at you again like, well, how am I? Because think about it like this. The bank is like WIFM. They're looking for their WIFM. What's in it for me? They want to know, how am I going to get paid? They're not giving you money because they think you're cute. They're giving you money because they want you to give it back to them. Plus interest. This is a business deal. So every angle that they're looking at you is looking from the standpoint of the likelihood that they're going to get their money back in their interest. Are they going to make the money that they want to make off your loan? I mean, and that's just being as real as it can be. So these are the type of things you want to refrain from doing. Large deposits, changing jobs, any type of new debt or loan, because they're going to check your credit again before you close. They'll check it at the beginning of the process, but before you sit at that closing table, they're going to look at your credit again. And they're going to come back and tell you, okay, this was not here before. What's this? What happened? Where did this come from? They're going to check their T's. dot their I's and they're going to check your T's. They're going to dot your I's too. They're going to know where it came from, who did it. Random deposits that are not associated with your income. Don't recommend. 0 stars, because they want to know where this money is coming from and how you got it. So just an example, when first property I purchased, the first house I was going to get, I didn't get it. It failed the inspection. It had like paper plates in the sump pump and it was all type of stuff. The inspector was like, well, I normally don't give people advice. He's like, but please don't buy this house.
You're like, thank goodness.
He was like, please don't buy this house. He said, whoever was in this house, they couldn't have been the owner. It had to be somebody who was renting, who didn't respect it. They tore this house up. So I didn't, but I had given $1,000 earnest money, which earnest money is basically good faith money you give once your offer has been accepted to let the seller know, okay, I'm serious. I'm not just throwing paper around. And it also gets deducted from your down payment at the end. So it's not just money you're giving away. But when it came to me to actually find the property that I did like, and I had finally got my earnest money back, I deposited into my account. I'm 27. I don't know. I'm thinking, I got the earnest money back. I put it in my account. They're like, well, where's that money come from? I'm like, oh, well, that was the earnest money. I sent them the paperwork to show them that it was from the earnest money. I'm thinking, okay, it's done. It's like, no, well, we need to see the check stubs from that period in time to see how you got the earnest money in the first place to be able to pay the earnest money for that property. I'm like, whoa, okay. So they checking everything. So that's one thing you definitely want to be mindful.
I think that's a really big one because people don't think about that. They're like, somebody gonna give me something. And that's one thing too, because, certain people are fortunate and they get gifted down payment assistance and, rich aunts, uncles and mom and dad and all that. But are there other ways to get your down payment if your lineage is not of tremendous wealth?
I mean, well, you have options. If you have money in your 401k, a lot of 401ks, their plan language allows you to take a down payment for it, but you have to make that assessment. Is that worth it? The interest that you would lose, is it worth you taking it to use it for your down payment? Like she said, if you don't have somebody who can give it to you, you do have the option. If you have somebody able to, they can gift you funds. You just have to follow the process to let them know this is where it's coming from, and they have to sign a letter. But of course, you communicate all of that with them. So if you get into like the real estate investing side, it's a lot more, ways that you can get money. But for you yourself, if you're looking to purchase a house, looking for creative ways to get money outside of your paycheck, is what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So outside of your paycheck, I mean, side hustles will be a way, but the problem with side hustles is you want to do that well before you start the process, because again, where did this money come from? Are you including this money in your income as far as qualifying for this home? So it's like everything comes into question and everything is being watched essentially.
And that's huge.
It gets kind of complicated.
And you talked about putting your team together. So how do you figure out, okay, my cousin uses realtor, so I should use them. Certain times, I remember my first house, I was like an inspector. How do I Google and
you want my honest opinion? Stalk them. Social media is a beautiful tool. I know a lot of people, they stay clear of social media because of negativity and things like that. Me personally, I will block and hide somebody from my timeline in a hot second, because utilize social media for all its wonderful glory. Most people who have a business, who want to stay relevant, post on social media regularly. Inspectors are going to be making posts and videos about, and then we have the wonderful TikTok. So search the hashtag home inspection, search the hashtag realtor closing day, search different home buying hashtags, and you will find a wonderful. If you are on Facebook, you can go on Facebook inside a group, find a group related to first-time home buyers, or a group like this group where you have people and financial education experts that are there for you to research. Use the search function in a group. That is a priceless tool that you cannot, I don't care if you just moved into this group today. If you use that search feature, you can see all of the posts from when that group first started. Use all of that. A lot of information is right at your fingertips. It's up to you to just use it and make it work for you. Essentially is what you want to do. So I recommend following them. Follow multiple, because you want to make sure this person resonates you. The first realtor that I had when I bought my property, as soon as we walked through the door, she's like, "This is it." I'm like, "But we haven't seen the kitchen." But I was young, I didn't know. Like, I knew I didn't like what she was doing, but I wasn't aware of my rights to know that I can just be like, "Oh, I'm not working with you." I actually ended up firing her and having to get a new realtor. I had to fire my realtor and my attorney my first time. Like, I had an interesting ride, but she would just walk in the house, and as soon as she walk in, this is it. Because at the end of the day, you have to think about it. They get paid when you close. Now, it's important for you to know that you're not paying them. The person who is selling the house is usually the one who covers the listing agent, which is the agent who is putting the house on the market, and the buyer's agent, which is the person that's representing the buyer who's buying the house. So you're not paying them, but essentially they're getting paid. Not to say that that's their only motive, but some of them it is. So you have to work to differentiate between the two. But that's why you don't wait until you're like, okay, I saved my money, I'm ready to buy a house tomorrow, because you're not giving yourself enough time to really look into anybody. And at that point, you've been working hard. You're anxious now. Like, you're proud of yourself. You're ready to get in your home. So you might pick somebody who's quicker. And some people might get mad that I say this, but there's no friends in real estate. It's based on relationships, but there's no friends in real estate. So you should not pick somebody solely because they're your friend, because they might be a real estate agent that works well with investors. And that's the type of client they're used to dealing with. You want somebody knowledgeable. As a first-time homeowner, you want somebody who can answer your questions. You want somebody who won't get frustrated because you're asking a lot of questions. You want somebody who's comfortable and eager to help you throughout this process. Now, I'm not saying you call them at 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night when you have a burning question.
Don't text me 5 a.m.
Exactly. Let's go a little far. That's what your notes section on your phone is for. Whatever question you're coming up with while you're going through this process, put it in your notes on your phone. So the next morning, you have them already organized of what questions you have burning in your mind, and you can ask them all. A good realtor, loan officer, inspector, they will be eager to answer your questions. A good inspector, a lot of times they have, technology. When they send you your inspection report, it'll have pictures, because all those wonderful big home buying words they use about a house that we have no idea what it is, they'll have a picture showing you what they're talking about. Like, you'll be able to find it yourself in the house, like, which again makes you empowered about the process. Some inspectors have infrared guns. Can you go read their reviews? Who has worked with them? And don't, some reviews you take with a grain of salt, because, some people, they like to complain. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two. But if you do all of that and you're getting a good overall feeling about this person, maybe you set up a consultation and ask them some questions about what the process looks like, and kind of judge by your feeling, interact. For lenders, you want to ask them questions. As I mentioned before about overlays, what are their overlays? What is their typical debt to income ratio that they will allow? So yes, they all analyze how much debt you have compared to how much income, but different lenders will allow you to have a different percentage of debt. What is that? If you have collections, do you have to pay them all off? Some lenders, especially with FHA, if you have a collection over 2 years, they might not make you pay. So you want to ask all of those questions and ask them. Down payment assistance. Ask your realtor, your lender, your real estate agent, everybody, home inspector, everybody. Do they know of any programs that might assist you? Do you also want to do a search your city, down payment assistance, search your state, your county, all of them. But also, again, do your research. Some down payment assistance programs require you to stay in the property for a certain period of time, or part of that down payment assistance turns into a loan. Some of them require higher credit scores. Some of them require for you to, like I said, stay in the house for a certain period of time. So, or they might require you to have certain income limits that might be different than what the lender had. So you want to research and find all these things out as you're going through the process. It's going to do two things. It's going to educate you, but it's also going to help keep you motivated and help you keep your mind on the home buying process.
Now, I think, if you're watching TV, you're watching some of these housing shows and all that kind of thing, and you're like, all right, I can negotiate everything. Like, I can get everything down. I'm paying half, whatever. I'm gonna make them pay this, that, and the third. What are some of the things that you can actually negotiate?
So there are a few things that you can negotiate. Of course, the price can be negotiated if after your home inspection, the inspector reports back that you have some repairs that absolutely have to be repaired, especially, for example, with FHA loans. FHA does not allow, the house has to be livable. So if you purchase a house with the FHA loan, you can't have cracked sidewalks and paveways. That has to be repaid in order for them to be able to fund your loan with an FHA loan. So those type of repairs and things like that, depending, you have to get them fixed. But you sometimes might have repairs, I don't know, maybe the toilet or random things that needed to be fixed throughout the house. You can either negotiate to have them fix it, which is called the repair amendment. And at that point, you'll kind of be negotiating with the seller to say, okay, can you fix this? And if you fix this, then I'll purchase the house. Or sometimes you might say, well, can you take this much money off my home price in lieu of me making these repairs? So no, you don't have to make these repairs, but if you take, $5,000 off, I'll be okay with it, and I'll do it myself. So you can negotiate those prices. You can negotiate how much down payment. You can ask the seller to pay some of your down payment. But a big part of this is what market you are in. So, you can get all kinds of credits and things like that. But I still recommend, regardless, I don't care if they tell you you only have to come to the closing table with $1. You want to still save up that amount of money and don't use that as a crutch, because that just means you have more money to be comfortable. You know how much peace of mind you have walking into your home? You only had to pay that small amount at closing, because now you got to buy furniture. You want to buy all new cleaning stuff because you cannot use that old broom in your new house. You need a new mop. You need a lot of things. You need a new garbage because the old garbage is dirty. You don't want to bring that into your new house. So it's like you have so many new things that you have to purchase. That's just going to make you have a better peace of mind and be able to purchase the things for your house and still be able to live. So you can negotiate a lot, but it depends on the market. Like she just talked about. What was that? That was 2020, because I actually I bought an investment property in 2020, but I ended up buying it like 3-4 hours away from where I live for that reason. The market in Chicago was crazy. They were paying $20,000, $30,000 more than the asking price. At that point, when you have a market like that, it's not much you're going to be able to negotiate, because think about it. If I'm selling my house and Rosalind coming to me and my house, I'm selling it for $150,000, but Rosalind going to pay me $170,000. But you want me to give you $10,000?
Like, come on now.
Right here with Rosalind, like, hey, sis. So you have to look at what market you in, and that will help you know. If it's a buyer's market, which means that it's more people trying to buy a house than there are houses available to buy, those sellers are going to be wanting to smooth you because they want you to buy their house because, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. If it's a buyer's market, when it's a lot of houses and then it's less people going to buy, because that way you have more options of what you're going to choose, and they're trying to encourage you to purchase their house. So they're going to want to give you seller's credit because they want you to pick them out of the many houses that are available. That's when you have a lot more power. But it depends what market it is when you purchase. But when you have the ability, and this again, be very vocal, communicate, let people know, ask your realtor, ask your attorney, your lender, you communicating is the best thing. Can they pay for that? Can they give me, it's called seller's credits. So seller's credit is basically when the seller is paying part of your down payment, they're putting money down to lower your price based on repairs. That's what it comes up like on the line item on the final paperwork. It says seller's credits. Ask them, are they giving seller's credit? Will they pay my closing costs? Because not saving up for closing costs and not having to pay it, baby, it's a beautiful thing. And it really just helps you get a jump start when you move into your house. So definitely, this is the reason why you want to research and not jump into it. Look how much stuff we've talked about. And there's still more stuff that we haven't even touched on. The home buying process is an extensive one. And that's why I educate people and why I highly encourage them to prepare. The process is stressful enough, but coming in more prepared and educated and having this knowledge about it makes you feel empowered. You feel more confident. You don't feel lost when the realtor and the lender is saying these different terms. You kind of know what they're talking about, which makes you feel more comfortable. And, when you don't really know the terms people are talking about and you have no clue what's going on, you start to get a little self-conscious and you start to be more timid about your process, and you'll be less likely to ask questions. And then you'll kind of talk yourself out of things like, oh, well, maybe they were right. Maybe I shouldn't. And lo and behold, they were scamming you. So be vocal, ask questions, find out, empower yourself in your process because it's yours.
Now, I remember my first home and going through the process. And I think one of the things you talked about, that inspection report, and the inspection report is like always a ton of stuff. And sometimes it could be something as small as like, there's the doorknob is loose. And you're like, I don't know. This ain't the house for me because they ain't put the doorknob on right. How do you make the adjustment in terms of what things are deal breakers versus what things are truly cosmetic? Because I know I was walking through my realtor and he's like, you can paint. And I'm like, ew, this wall is ugly. How do you determine? Because as a first time home buyer, I think sometimes it's hard to put your kind of arms around that thought.
So the first thing is, this is one reason why you're going to research your people, because you're going to find people who work well with first-time home buyers, or maybe they've had, different home. You'll be able to tell if they had other first-time home buyers in the past. 2, you make sure you are there on inspection day. When he is going through your house, you are there because you want to be there to catch those things that he thinks about and sees. Because again, this is a report. It's no way he can put everything that he's thinking in this report. So for example, when I purchased the investment property I was just talking about, during my inspection, my inspector told me, oh, your water heater is going to need to be replaced. First of all, I had a tall water heater and I shouldn't have had a short one. So the slope of the pipe was affecting the water pressure. And then he said, and it's making a gurgling noise, and your warranty expired 9 years ago on it. It's long past its warranty. He said, so if I bought the house in November. So if I'm moving a tenant in, I don't want to move a tenant in with a bad water heater in November when it gets cold here. The last thing I want is my tenant to be without hot water in the middle of the winter. And then that call is going to be super expensive because they're going to be flooded with calls, and they're going to charge me way more money to come out in the middle of winter because they know I need it. So you want to go to your inspection. You want to, again, communicate, talk, be vocal, because some things might seem bad. Like one big thing that seems horrible, sometimes it's horrible, but it's not always, is when your basement smells when you first walk into the basement. Sometimes that's a horrible sign, but sometimes it might not be. So that's why you want to go down there. You want to smell it for yourself. Some people don't like old basements, but that's the money room. Because your furnace is down there, your water heater, your main stack line that goes to your toilet, all of those things are down there in that basement. So you can get a real good, your foundation, of course, if there's a crack in your foundation, you should be able to see it because you're going to see wet spots all over. And if it rained when you had your home inspection, if it had a heavy rain, you are lucky. I know they say that about weddings. If it rains during your weddings, it's lucky. But if it has a hard rain at the time of your inspection, don't be mad. Walk through that wet grass, because that will help you see, is water sitting. If water's sitting in your yard or your lawn, that's not the house for you. Unless you're an investor who want to take on a project, that might not be the house for you. So you want to empower yourself in the process, be a part of the process, and use it as a learning opportunity, because it'll also help you after you're in the house. Deciding what's a deal breaker or not depends on what's needed to fix it. So these are questions you might be able to ask your inspector. Well, how would I fix that? Or what do I have to do? Well, ask them to walk you through it. Like, so what would I have to do that? Because like, for example, it might be something that, because like with mold, if it's mold that it's already been resolved, you could just knock that wall out, put a new wall. Because maybe they resolved it, but they just didn't fix that wall. But you need to know how deep is the problem. But if it's just surface, you can fix that. That's not something that's like a deal breaker, but you have to ask questions and learn it. Because as you said, when you're a first homeowner and you're first going in, You don't know. See, I know these things because my mentor, I literally go follow him through houses. When he's working on his properties, I literally will go follow him and just go through the properties and ask a whole bunch of questions. So I see what he does when he's looking at properties to purchase and what he does to fix the properties he has. So I've seen a lot of different things. But my first, I had no clue about any of that stuff. All I knew was I'm sorry, I have to say this. I don't care how those cabinets look. I don't care how that island look. That's not it.
An ugly light fixture.
You can buy new ones. It's going to be your house. It's going to be all yours. And when it's all yours, you can get whatever light fixtures you want, your little heart desires. But you want to make sure that the foundation of the house and the big things, the roof is a big one. Is the roof new? How soon have they replaced it? Bathrooms and kitchen. How soon has it been fixed? Look under the sinks in the kitchen. Is there a water spot sitting under the sink? Have they repainted under the sink? Because if they just repainted under the sink, they might be covering something up. You know, you got to look and see, because people have tricks for days, man.
They're just expecting you not to know. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why you got to open, ask questions, get your little notebook and your pen and show up an inspection day. Like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. One, because this is a transaction unlike many other, because if you rent an apartment and you hate it, either you're going to ride it out for a year, maybe you're going to fight with your landlord, you're going to get out early. Mm-hmm. If you buy something off some site online, you send it back. But a house, it's not many places you can go and be like, I ain't noticed I was going to have to replace my hot water heater in the first 3 months of owning the home. Or, how was I supposed to know that somebody flushed diapers down the toilet months ago and all of a sudden now I'm having issues? Mm-hmm. And since you can't necessarily just go back, and I think that's probably one of the bigger kind of shocks when you go from renting to owning, and you like, who I call? It's like, oh,
you.
It's me.
You are the call. That's how I look at it in my book. I say, I used to call to get things fixed in an apartment. Guess what? Now you are the call. So I recommend researching home warranty companies. If you go into a property and it's an older property, but the furnace is still good, the water heater is still good, look into a home warranty. But I don't have any recommendations for exact companies, but look into them, because home warranty is similar to home insurance, which is similar to car insurance. So find out what riders and what exactly is good for you to have on your policy, because we all know, like flooding, on a basic homeowner's insurance policy, a lot of times flooding is not included. You have to get a special rider to add that. So that's why you want to ask questions. You want to research. You want to look at reviews. Use the internet and your resources to your ability. Ask your home buying dream team. They've been selling houses to how many people? I'm sure they've heard some stories from different clients that they've had.
And so I know we're almost at time. One thing, if someone is saying, all right, I think I want to buy a house this year, how soon do they need to get their house in order? So what is the typical timeline for someone to go from, okay, I think I'm ready, to holding the keys?
So the typical timeline, again, it depends on the person. How much debt do you have? Are you a big spender? So you need to work on your spending before you purchase a house. Are you wanting to purchase a house, but you're having problems paying your current bills? You get paid, you feel like you make too much money to be this broke. It's not time yet. So you work on now, once somebody has gotten their financial house in order, how quickly you can save the money. How quickly you can get up enough money to be able to pay that down payment, because it's nothing like them telling you, so going through the home buying process and the underwriter is checking all of your things. They send you two very important documents, your closing disclosure and your loan estimate. But legally, they have to send that 3 days before closing. How do you feel 3 days before closing, someone telling you, oh, well, we need you to have $18,000 on Friday? And you don't have $18,000. And again, we don't have rich uncles, so we just can't say, Unc, can you give me $10,000 real quick? And especially if you're going to say, oh, I'm just going to take it out of my 401k, it might not be available that fast. And they already calculated you not taking that money. So they probably possibly already use your 401k as part of your reserve. So if you take that out, guess what? Now that's going to switch your whole home buying, process and possibly delay your closing. So you want to make sure you're prepared before and make sure you have money saved, because they give you like 3 days notice to tell you how much money to have at the closing table. Like, you get an estimate, but they don't give you that final number once they've crunched it and looked at all the percentages and prorated taxes and all that stuff. Because even if you buying in November, they're going to prorate the taxes for that 1 month, and then you don't pay that. You don't know till 3 days, and it's based on the date that you close. So I would hate to be in that predicament. I got 3 days to come up with 18,000. I would be a nervous wreck.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then you're like, I just spent all this money because they not giving
all this money, all this time. Underwriter has tap danced on your last nerve because they want to know why this document got your middle initial and this one don't.
And the seller gonna be like, so you getting this or not?
and the seller gonna be like, look, I don't care about none of that. Right. You sign a document, you already passed your due diligence period. So when you first purchase a house and you put in an offer, you have a certain period of time to do your due diligence, which means you have a certain period of time to look at this property and see and confirm you still want to buy it. That's when you get your home inspection. That's when the bank calls for the appraisal. This is the time for you to really see. You thought the house was pretty. Correct. You saw the house was pretty. Now let's see what it's talking about on the inside. That's your time to do that. So once you finish that, you possibly breaching the contract, depending on the circumstances. Now, depending on what your purchase agreement said that you were vowing to do. A lot of times you'll say, like, as long as I can get financing, I still want to purchase this house. So of course, if your financing falls through, then that's your out. But it all depends.
And they might be like, listen, I ain't gonna wait on you to figure out if you can come up.
And then you won't get your earnest money back. Your earnest money will be gone.
And nobody want to donate. Yeah. And
I'm not doing
like, I wasted all this time waiting on you to buy this. Because they might be trying to move. They might be trying to use that money for their retirement or something.
That's very true. That's very true.
Now, I know we're right up against time. If you all have any questions, feel free to drop that in the chat. Let us know where you are in your home buying process and maybe even where you're buying your first home. But Nia, I want you to tell us about your book. I know you wrote a book recently.
Oh, I did. So I wrote a book. It's called Life is Short, Buy the House, The Ultimate Guide to Prepare for Homeownership. This book, I tell my own story about when I purchased my house and the mistakes I made and what I should have did and shouldn't have did. And then I tell my journey about how I eventually I'm now a real estate investor. So, I took that and I want to help others, as we talked about today, just be more prepared, know what to expect in the journey. Of course, I can't include every single scenario that will happen, but it talks about budgeting, it talks about credit and teaching you what your credit score means so you can move better. When you know better, you do better. It talks about emergency fund. Like you said, how much should you save? Then it goes into making a decision. Is home ownership right for you? It's all based on your situation. So it tells you the pros and cons of renting versus owning, so you can make an educated decision. Then I go into the home buying process and I talk about every single step from pre-approval to closing. I talk about each member of the home buying team, what their job is and how to shop for them. Then I go into moving expenses, because that's another reason you need to save. Moving can be very expensive. So what are some things you can do to prepare for moving and some things to possibly save some money? And then I talk about 10 things not to do while navigating the home buying process. And last but not least, I have home buying terms you should know. So a lot of those main terms that I used today or that we talked about, there's a description and it's in alphabetical order in the back. So while you're going through your process, you can easily access it and look up a word that you might not be familiar with. And everything is in plain language. I like to break things down so that anybody can understand it, because sometimes it's not that you don't understand it, but you form this mental block about things because you're a little bit scared of the process. So I like to make sure that it's like, there's no way you're not going to understand this.
So Roland says, literally just apply for a home loan on Friday. We are cheering for you throughout.
Oh, yes. Congratulations.
So definitely, even if you want to pick up the book, and so you'll have some of those terms as you're going through the process, because the process is still another, 30-ish days, depending on how demand is at the moment. So you might have a whole, you'll be hopefully celebrating in February, just in time for spring to start. You can get you some good plants. Settled in.
Yes, the plan. Mm-hmm.
Hey, about that wallet. Say good evening,
Oh,
everyone.
hey, hi, Andy.
And so, one, if you were thinking about starting the process, if you are about to start process, if you are in the process and you like, what the hell is going on? Pick up Nia's book. Nia, where can they get your book?
So it's on Amazon. Life is Short, Buy the House. If you search it, it's actually one of the first ones that comes up. And of course, my website, www.perspectiveschange.com.
I love it. I want to thank you for being with us today, Ro. We are celebrating you on your first home. Hopefully, this process
Yes.
is going to be smooth.
Yes.
And until next time, I can't wait to see you all again. And remember, there are so many different ways that you can customize your overall financial independence journey. And sometimes that's home ownership. Sometimes that's looking at different ways to grow your wealth. But it's a great foundational element. And I know we've talked a whole bunch about, real estate in your portfolio and what that looks like. So be sure to check it out. Be sure to check out Nia, and all of her social media is in the description as well. So as you think about, is it right for me? But let's make those changes and grow our wealth in 2023. Until next time, have a good night, y'all.
Bye.